Welcome to the EW Podcast. I'm Eric White. In today's episode, I sit down with Jay Wick. Jay is a licensed marriage and family therapist and host of the Coming Into Focus podcast. This is actually Jay's second appearance on the EW Podcast, and I was very happy to have him back. In this episode, Jay and I start off by discussing the new Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, and we examine some of the ways social media affects each of us individually. We also discuss the political polarization of today, and Jay puts on his therapist hat to talk about how to improve disagreements. This conversation was a ton of fun for me, and I hope you find something useful out of it. I've got a lot of love for Jay, and I think his quality as both a therapist and a friend shine brightly in this conversation. So without further ado, I present Jay Wick. So what's up, Jay Wick?
Not a whole lot, man. Just scrambling to get ready to sit down and take a couple deep breaths right before I sat down with you so that I'm not anxious and out of breath when I talk with you.
Yeah, well, you sound good, and we'll be chatting for a little bit, so time to shake off those... I always find at the beginning of the interview, there's always like a weird tension or anxiety that I have to fight through, and then it's not till like 30 minutes in or something where I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm chilling.
For me, that's what happens when I do the first therapy session with somebody, like sitting down, meeting somebody for the first time and kind of feeling them out. And the same thing with like, if it's a person I've never met with the podcast, I think it comes from social anxiety, which is like social anxiety is just all about fear of being judged, you know? Yeah. So it's like this space of anxiety at the beginning where you're trying to read the room and be like, do you like me? Do you like what we're talking about? Oh, okay, you do. All right, I can settle down and be myself now.
Yeah, I can definitely vibe with that. I suffer from a little social anxiety myself. So.
Yeah, it's been a long-standing one for me.
It's the struggle.
Yep.
So you watched The Social Dilemma? You get in on that? What'd you think, man?
So me and my fiance watched it. I knew it was going to be pretty shocking, you know, it was such an interesting thing. Like on one part to hear the developers of all these things saying how addicted they are to the things they've created, even though they know how bad they are and like what it's doing, you know? Yeah. And then like, cause I could relate at the same time where I was watching it going, well, what the fuck else am I supposed to do? Like I live on social media. I run a social media marketing company now, like as a side thing, like how am I supposed to not be on social media, you know? Yeah. So, and then it's just disturbing seeing the nature of like talking about destabilizing countries. Like people could go in and use these things to literally destabilize country. And then you're seeing our country right now feeling very divided and destabilized. And it's kind of like, fuck, is that part of what's happening right now?
I know. And I think it is, man. And it's just so eye-opening. It was so eye-opening to me to like just see the timeline of everything. You know, they talked about female suicide rates, and they showed how that massive uptick happened whenever social media was available on smartphones. It's just like, damn, dude, there's real world consequences for these social media things that happen. Right. And I was interested to chat with you about that too, because like you said, you have been starting a social media business. So now that's like fully entwined into your day to day.
Yeah. It's how I actually sent a text to my fiance this morning and told her, you know, like I'm a therapist also. So I'm like, you know, I do a lot of couples therapy. So I pay attention to these things. And so I try to like, she wrote me a little note on the counter. Hope you have a good day. I text her, hey, thanks for the note. Hope you have a great day. And, you know, can't wait till you get home and we could like snuggle a little, you know, something like nice. Right. But it came out of also a real serious place that like, we just like sit in bed sometimes and just stare at our phones, and we have a king size bed so we can have some pretty good distance between us. And I'm like, dude, we don't even like touch each other sometimes. Like no hugs, no kissing. Like it's just looking at the TV or the phone and checking those, you know, oh, you got a notification. What is it? Like get that
rush,
dopamine
man.
hit. Yeah.
Do you feel like sometimes you're like looking for that same kind of comfort that maybe people would normally look to from their partner? Like, is it taking the place of that in some circumstances?
I think, well, for me personally, I think what happens is it becomes a distraction, and then I lose sight of, hey, I have a live body human right here in front of me that I could engage with. And then she's losing sight of things like that too. And so it's also like we've wrapped into this place now where we both run a couple different businesses too. She's a hairstylist. I'm a therapist. We do the social media together. Like, and then I had a photography business for a while. She's got a blog. So everything is online. And how do you market it? And how do you get people to find you if you're not engaging in social media? So then it becomes this thing where it's justified. Like, okay, well, I need to do my marketing for my business today. And then you get kind of lost in it. But it's just, it's become more apparent to me how easy it is to lose sight of the physical connection and the actual real person. Like, don't even like say hi and give a hug, it's just like staring at the phone and like, so that's definitely one thing that made me come back after watching that too, to be like, there is not a need to be looking at this thing every time a notification pops up. And like we went on a walk the other day and I left my phone in the car on purpose, just to be like, I don't need, while I'm walking in nature at the beach, I don't need to be staring at my phone. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very bizarre time, dude.
I know. It is. And I definitely find that for me, like, especially after I've made a post or something, it really happens to me after I've made a post, like on Instagram, for example, make a post on Instagram. And then I just become so absorbed with who saw it, who liked it, who commented, like, did people appreciate it? Did people receive it how I wanted it to be received? And you kind of lose track of time. And it's just like, where did all that energy go?
Right.
Into like analyzing myself through the lens of this media where I have a couple hundred followers who have no idea why I said what I said or where it came from. And then it's like, it can make me feel down, dude. It can literally affect my mood.
Yeah. It's like a feeling of being left out too, because you see other people and you go, well, why are they, what was it about theirs that generated so much attention? Or, mine seemed better. And and you get in this space too of like feeling like somebody, oh, well, they must be like the cool kids and I'm not, and people don't want to pay attention to me. It's I pay too much attention to social media. So that was like really interesting for me to watch that documentary. And it was stuff that I kind of already knew. And then some stuff that was a little beyond, like even hearing them talk about how they write these algorithms, which is just like it's just a flow chart for a computer to basically like, if this, then yes, if this, then no, and whatever. But then the algorithm learns and it gets beyond even what the person that created it. So they're like, we intend these things to be pretty good sometimes. And then it gets away from us and we see what it turns into. Is crazy.
Yeah, like the dude who created the like button. I think he said something like, we created that to generate more positivity in the world, to make people happier. And then, someone else said, once you put those things out into the world, it's not up to you to decide how it's going to be used anymore. You know?
And that's like exactly what you're talking about right there, where it's like the like button could just be such a comforting, nice thing. But when it's not coming to you in the way that you
when it's
hope,
not getting hit, when people aren't hitting it, it's like.
So I mean, there's like a side thing, real quick too, is with all of that. I think you had asked before about like how I feel because I do social media and I pay, like all of that. So like, I think I try. The therapist in me is also always trying to see like silver linings and optimism and positivity and things too, and I see a lot of good things come out of social media. And even that one guy had a super impressive resume. He was like the guy that was in charge of monetization for Facebook and the president of Pinterest and whatever. Like he was like, it's done a lot of really good things and it's doing some crazy things now. So it's like, I don't know, finding that balance, because we're not getting away from it right now.
No. And that's one thing I was thinking about before we got on was, in the aftermath of that video, like as soon as I watched it the first night, I deleted all social media off my phone. I was like, all right, I'm going cold turkey. I'm done with this. And then 2 days later, I was like, well, I'll just get on it every once in a while.
Let me get a
bit,
little, baby.
Yeah. I actually started using Twitter again in the aftermath of that, because I had this thought of like, okay, it is a useful tool. It's just not being used properly, right? It's just being used against us in a way. So it's like, I don't know if that the answer is not using it at all. Right? That doesn't seem constructive.
Using it with intention or something, But then it's like, but what's the intention? So while we were watching that, I kept having these crazy like rabbit holes that I'd go down to with respect to how to use social media for my advantage. Like in sort of like, I was thinking of, there was like a thing where they were talking about what their goal is like engagement. There was like 3 things that they said, right? And what they want.
Engagement, growth, and something else. Engagement, growth, and I can't remember.
So that's the goal, right? And engagement is like, how long can you keep them on your page or looking at your stuff, and then grow, blah, blah, blah. But like during those things, watching this thing that's supposed to couch social media in this like really negative light for me, I was also like, oh my God, I was coming up with like schemes of how to like get people to be more engaged with this information now too. So like, okay, I help with this company, this CBD company. I could create this type of like, I don't even want to say it because it was pretty brilliant, but like I could create this type of like little like contest type of thing or whatever that would be specifically designed to keep people engaged for a period of time with a little reward at the end. What did they say? Like there's the psychological like concept.
Delayed intermittent gratification.
It's like intermittent reward or something. So you don't always get a reward, but you're going to get a reward, and then
the casino,
use that.
The slot machine thing. Yeah,
you might get a little one here and there. You might get a big one, but it keeps you going for that. Like, but I might, right?
Yeah.
And then like I'm thinking about those things and like, how could I incorporate that into the work that I do? So I don't know. It's kind of. Me and my fiance were talking about it afterwards. Like, it's kind of sad that both of us were like, this is fucked up. And then at the same time, like, well, if you can't beat them, join them. Like,
Well, it's like the user only has so much control of how these things are used, right? You can control who you follow and like make sure that you follow a wide range of perspectives so that you're not putting yourself in an echo chamber, right? And just to go back to what you're saying about like motivations for, engagement or whatever. One of the things that really scares me about it is that it seems like fear and anger are the 2 biggest motivators for social media. And maybe you could speak to that as a therapist in your own line of work. Is that those are probably the 2 emotions that make people most willing to act, right?
Yeah. I mean, so I'm trying to think of like, to stand on a platform and be like an expert and say like, I know about this, I don't know necessarily. So I'm trying to figure out a way, but like, to me, it seems like one, just a human being, just a person with an opinion, a subjective experience. Like that's how media works, right? Like it seems like it's slowly evolved more from journalism, reporting on something objectively and whatever, to creating clickbait and stirring up controversy and drama. And we live in the era of reality TV, drama, scripted drama. And then like media has kind of almost become scripted drama. So now media has drifted away, or, any journaling, reporting, whatever, is almost drifted away from actually reporting on something to creating a sensationalized thing. And then and they know that psychologically is going to get a pull at us. If I'm scrolling through my phone and I only want to read Tank's good news on my Instagram or whatever, like I purposely pick accounts that only post good news because I want to see that stuff.
Is a good one.
Yeah. And Upworthy and like all these other, whatever ones that are going to post uplifting things, animal videos, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, if I'm scrolling through my Apple News, like on my phone, and I see, which is just all doom and gloom, but I see murder of 3 and blah, 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 whatever, and I don't want to click on it, there's a sick part of me that wants to click on it and look at it. And I think maybe there's an anxiety piece about it that like to me, anxiety is it's always seeking like certainty and control, right? Or like certainty and comfort. And a lot of these things we hear about, like there is no certainty, there is no comfort. But if we read the article and we stay aware of it and we like stay thinking we're on the forefront of it, then maybe psychologically there's this piece to us that we feel like we're doing like preventative kind of work or something when really we're just getting fucking riled up. Like,
yeah. Do you think it's also people like to feel better of themselves, and sometimes whenever you see bad news that involves other people, it kind of makes you not feel so bad about your own situation?
I mean, I definitely know that that's a possibility, and I see, like, I guess there's probably some of that, and then we're just also not quite as aware of how it's affecting us on the negative side. We become like desensitized and numb to it. I read 20 articles about somebody being shot, somebody being murdered, this happened, family molested their kid, this, like, I mean, so many gnarly things, and you just scroll through it and you just keep going. That shit should affect us. Like, that shit should hurt my heart when I read that. And I'm like, well, I don't know, what can I do, you know?
Next one. And
right.
Just, yeah.
I mean, I did a podcast with a dude where we talked about like how sad music like really helped him through sad times. And it was interesting to me because I used to kind of have the perception of like, well, why would you want to listen to that stuff that's making you more sad? Like, right? Like, it's like dragging you down into the doldrums of what you're already feeling. But then what came out of it also was like, yeah, but it's also helping you process those emotional states that you're sitting with. So you're actually learning some skill of like learning how to cope with the feelings of sadness and all that. I don't think that's the same on this level because we're not having to cope with it. We're learning how to avoid it. We just like keep pushing by. And well, it's not affecting me personally. I guess I'll just keep going, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure.
That was a random tangent.
No, that makes sense because I'm trying to think of like compare the two situations, like think of myself whenever I was depressed and how it would have felt to look at sad news versus listen to sad songs. Because whenever I was really depressed, I was listening to Kid Cudi. Man on the Moon was his album at the time. And that shit like spoke to me. That helped me get through a lot of stuff for sure. Right. But then I can't think of there being like sad news that would have made me feel the same way, you know? And I think it's like, I think what you said about helping you process things is more true with the music than it is with the news, because with the news, you're I don't know, you're just like.
Well, the music, sorry. The music seems, as you were saying this, I just started thinking more about this kind of like Kid Cudi, you relate. Like, right, you're hearing it, you know, some of his own struggles or whatever, and then you're hearing this kind of emo rap kind of whatever you want to describe it as, right? And like you go, oh, I can relate to a piece of that, and it feels good to relate to another person because we feel connected. I know someone else is going through what I'm going through. Now you look at these morbid stories on the news, and you don't necessarily relate because they're extreme. They're the extreme cases of things. So then you're kind of like, well, I don't relate. And then almost in a negative way, it's like, well, since I don't relate, I don't have to care or pay attention to it. So I just keep, you know, I don't know. But it still gets in there into your psyche. Like we went camping for 3 days. I think I was telling you this when we were talking on the phone, like out of cell service, camping, whatever. Fine. Everything's wonderful. I don't know what's going on in the world, and the world's still turning, and I'm having a nice time being present in Yosemite. And then when I get back to my cell service by my buddy's house in Mammoth, I'm like, look at the news. Like, you know, like the news, you need to know what bad shit is happening in the world. And I mean, I relate back to this pandemic when it first started and everyone was getting so wrapped up into it. And this is not a political or what side or whatever. It's just an observation of like how access to media, when like whatever the last one was in 2009 or 8 or whatever, I think of SARS or something like that. I don't even remember paying attention to it. I don't even remember being worried. I heard about it, some whatever, but I didn't have Facebook then either. And I didn't have these media sources to be constantly looking at it all day. Like, and then now you have this thing where we get shut down and we have time to look at our phones even more. I was telling Carly, my fiance, like it almost feels like we sped up what they're describing in that Social Dilemma movie. Like how the social fabric is going to start ripping apart, right? And it's like, okay, well, it might have taken time at the rate. If everybody's at work for 8 hours a day and you don't have as much time to look at your phone, all right, I'm going to get riled up about this conspiracy theory or this thing or the right or the left or whatever, but I got to go back to work and I don't really have time. And I get home at the end of the day, I take care of my kids and whatever, and I go to bed. But now I'm home. And I have time to look at shit, and I have time to get pissed off about things and go down rabbit holes and have YouTube recommend me rabbit holes to go down, right?
Well, dude, and then off of that, not only do you personally have more time, but there are people specifically curating those things to get you fired up.
Right.
And we don't have to spend too much time on this, but that's like one of the things that I dislike about Sean King is he has figured that out and is like seeking out the worst of the worst to share with people. That's not proportion. It's not a proportion. It's not a representative proportion of what actually happens in the real world. Right. But it's someone who is specifically curating these things to get people fired up. So then it influences your worldview to believe that what you just witnessed is widespread.
Right. I mean, so I'll play devil's advocate because I like Sean King.
Okay.
I kind of like the stuff that, I mean, so it's part of what I have in my feed, and I don't subscribe to either left or right. I don't like to put a label on who I am or what I am. Like I pick and choose from things, and a lot of it's about like character and whatever else and all these other things. Right. But like so I'll read CNN, I'll read Fox News, I'll look at Sean King, I'll look at some other stuff. I try to like get a wide range of information coming at me. But I can tell you, like, without that dude posting things, I might not also know that these things are happening, right? And like, not to go too in depth into some of this stuff, but like for me growing up, white kid in Encinitas and whatever, having not a lot of diversity, I didn't face a lot of these things. And so now seeing, like, I see where you're at, because how the media makes these things expand into, like, I see this and then I go, oh my God, that's happening everywhere all the time right now. But it is happening at larger rates than we know about otherwise. And so, I'm kind of like, I don't know. I see what it's doing. This is the thing. Even if you take him out of it or whatever, if you go back to just the Social Dilemma documentary and what they're talking about is there is not as much center anymore and people willing to meet in the middle and talk. There's divisive. There's like you are in one camp or the other. And if you don't like the other person's camp, or there's not even a cordial discussion that could be had anymore. It's just like, well, fuck you and your opinions for what you said. And I'm going to keep getting news filtered to me that verifies what I want to believe and what I think in the world. And the guys that design this stuff are specifically saying that's what it's doing. Mm-hmm. You think that your worldview is the right worldview because you're seeing all these news articles. Like, this is a quote from the movie. Like, the guy was like, you think your family members or your friends are stupid. Like, how the fuck do they think this or whatever? But they're not reading the same news as you.
Right.
They're clicking on things, and then it's curating a feed for them to support the bias that they already have. And then our biases get fucking stronger, and we don't want to have conversations anymore.
It just seems so common sense to me that we would have an outlet that we can all trust and get information from that is non-biased, or at least presents its bias plainly and offers both sides of the story to fix that divide. Just because, like you're saying, the things you're seeing, the news you're seeing is totally just curated for you. And but what makes it to you is not up to you. What makes it to you is up to the algorithm that is feeding you your daily intake.
And it doesn't necessarily care what news you're getting. It cares what attention you're giving, right? Like, basically, it doesn't care what it's feeding you. The algorithm's an inanimate thing. It doesn't have intentions to try to get you to swing left or right or whatever. It just has intentions to do what its job is to do, is keep your attention so that they can throw an ad up at you at some point too that will possibly sell to you and whatever, and then they can keep collecting data on you while you go down a rabbit hole or something. It's crazy. Like, there's no, I kind of, even like on the other side, right? So now we're fucking questioning everything. Like, even watching that so when during the first shutdown, there was that movie that came out, the Plandemic or something, right? There was like a big documentary came out that they were like, we're blowing the lid off this and it's a planned thing and the whole world is, government officials are in on it, whatever, something, right? And then they were taking it off of YouTube. And so people that wanted to believe one side were saying, see, they're censoring, they're taking it off YouTube. And the other side was saying, this is fucking fake information. Like, it doesn't need to be on YouTube. But now that creates more divide too. So we're getting to a place where we also don't know who and what we can trust. Because it's sort of, and people also have this conscious knowledge of this. So they're using it to their to manipulate and for their own, gain.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy.
It's crazy.
I was going to say something else, but I forgot about. Oh, watching The Social Dilemma. There was a part of me that was also kind of like, this is a documentary for that one guy's new humane whatever project. Like, which I can't fault him for creating that, but also he has an agenda and he has a place now to create a better place. And he created this documentary that kind of talks badly about the other side of it. So, okay, I want to hold him in higher regard because he's an ethicist and all this other stuff. But at the same time, doesn't he stand to make some money off of some of these things that he's doing?
That's true. Yeah, you're talking about Tristan Harris, the
redhead guy?
The redhead guy.
Yeah. He was doing like the speech and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I mean, there's definitely some truth to that for sure. But I think I didn't even have that question. And I think it was just because they were presenting stuff that I knew at some level that I already was like, I know. I mean, I'm only 30 years old, so I haven't, seen the political world for very long, but it just seems like recently things are just so divisive. People are just so stuck in their camps. And, to go back to the race thing right now, like, just because this is, very important. We're both white guys, so I'm not going to get too critical here. But there's certain points that if you just ask questions you ask about what is going on, then you are considered a racist or a right-wing, Trump voter, where it's like, no, this is just a fact that I'm bringing up and I want to know because we want to get, the best way to get to a good solution is to know all the facts. And it just seems like people are being starved of those facts in some way. And so it's like diluting our conversation to the point where we're not even trying to find solutions now. We're just trying to win, everybody's just trying to be the one that can drop the mic and be like, I got him, and it's fucking crazy, man.
Yeah. I mean, so even on a, like to bring it back to like a therapy level, what you're describing is like what I do with families or couples all day is people so I do emotionally focused therapy for couples, and it's kind of got this roadmap of like what to look at, and it's based in attachment theory and all that. But there's some very distinct things that you're like, notice what happens when people don't have problems when they're not escalated or having problems, right? You fight about something and it's the fight about the dishwasher and you get pissed, but then you move on and you resolve things. And when people get increasingly hurt feelings and escalated, they start to stay in these patterns where they call like a negative interactional cycle. And what happened, you guys say?
I was just going to ask, so are you talking about whenever you have arguments and they go unresolved and it's kind of just let there to simmer and not really dealt with?
Sort of, yeah, right? Like one part is, did you feel validated on your side? Did you feel heard? Did you feel understood, right? You're not always going to get to that place, but that's a point. If one person is never feeling heard, then they're going to ramp up their strategy to be heard, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're going to continue. So what they call like a negative interactional cycle is where what happens in arguments is, say we've had previously unresolved things, and you combine that with my own onboard insecurities that I already have, or feelings of like, I'm not smart enough, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not whatever. And somebody says something, it could be fucking benign. Like they could just say something, your partner could say like, hey, did you wash the dishes today? And you could be like, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? Like, I do so much shit around here and whatever. And they're like, whoa. Like all I was saying, or they get critical back. Well, you never fucking do anything either around here. Right. And like, that's where things start to escalate. And it comes out of a pattern of like defensiveness. I heard you say something that felt like an attack, even if it wasn't an attack. And so I'm going to attack back. And like, we get into this place now in society and culture too, where everybody's feeling attacked and everybody feels like the other side is looking down on them or stupid or whatever. So you already feel, well, these Trump supporters feel I'm stupid, or these liberals feel I'm fucking stupid and they think this about me. So a liberal says something to some Trump supporter, hey, could I just ask you a question? Like, what is it about this guy that you support, right? And they're like, well, fuck you and your, you know, like, it's not, it's like, hey, I am actually trying to have a conversation. Like, what are the things you find valuable about him, right? Okay, you asked me, what do I find valuable about being a liberal? I don't know. But like, we just get stuck.
That's actually an interesting place to maybe discuss is, you know, I think one of the things that's really difficult right now is to have those kind of conversations with people that don't get super emotional and don't become, you know, an attack defense kind of scenario. So like, what do you recommend from, you know, your experience as a therapist in terms of having that discussion? You know, we have Thanksgiving coming up. Families are going to be around the table. We have things, you know, the holidays are getting close. How can people have these types of discussions without escalating?
So that's the thing. Like, we exist in systems, like relational systems, right? And we're a part of it. So there's an intrapersonal part of things that happens where you have to like be able to reflect and have some introspection on what makes me feel insecure, what makes me tick, why do I get offended, why do these topics make me angry, whatever. You have to constantly be willing to do some work thinking about yourself. And then you also have to realize that you exist within interpersonal relationships within relation to people, right? So they may say things that might trigger you, but can you also go, okay, they didn't intend to say that way, right? Like, am I reading too into this? Am I taking this too hard when they're just actually just bringing up a topic? Like, so that's some of the work that I do with people is there's this video that's it's called the still face experiment, and it's have I showed that to you? Yeah,
no, okay. Not familiar.
So it's a baby that's sitting. It's like an infant. And the baby's sitting there and the mom's looking at the baby and the baby's pointing at things and laughing and whatever. And the mom is actively real time responding to what the baby's doing. And then the mom turns around and then the mom stone face just stares at the baby. And the baby's like really confused, like immediately. Right. And so it goes to strategies that it was doing before, like a little giggle, a little laugh, a point, or whatever. And mom just keeps staring straight at the baby, right? And then the baby, you can see, I mean, this happens within like 30 seconds. The baby just starts to just like completely fall apart. And so the baby's like squeals and screeches and starts kind of moving around in its chair. And then it just breaks down crying. And then the mom finally like, oh, it's okay. I'm here. Right. But I say all of this to go back to your thing, because what I always explain to people within just like couples therapy or relation is that baby's ramping up the strategy to get noticed and to get connection and to get its needs met, right? Like, it's feeling disconnection, and we fear disconnection like death because we're social beings and we need to be connected, and it's built into our biology. And when some of us feel secure because we've always had nurturing relationships and whatever, and some of us feel really scared that people are going to abandon us or they're going to let us down. But like, we develop strategies along the way to be heard, to be seen, to be valued, to be validated or whatever, right? So then now you get in relation with your family members and these strategies come out, as opposed to being able to sit down in the vulnerable space and be like, hey, that sort of hurts my feelings, what you just said, right? But, and then also it takes like, so instead of saying that hurts my feelings, I say, well, you never fucking do it this or that, right? Like, I criticize back because I get defensive and you hurt me, or I perceive you to hurt me, so I want to hurt you back. It's a strategy to come level the playing field, and I'm going to escalate up the ladder if it's not working. The antidote to it is to drop down and be able to talk in like vulnerable ways. Like, hey, it makes me feel, slightly underappreciated when this happens. And recognizing also, I'm not blaming you when I'm saying that. I'm describing my own subjective experience and just saying, hey, this is kind of how I felt about something, right? And then you can go, I could understand how you might feel that way, right? To bring it back to like race talks and things like that, people want to get so, and this is, again, not me necessarily saying what's right or wrong, but when somebody says Black Lives Matter and somebody says, all lives matter or fuck you, you know, whatever, right? It's gonna by nature create more defensiveness again on the other side, and then they're gonna bite back, and then they're gonna bite back, right? As opposed to going, help me understand a little bit more what it is that you're experiencing or what it is that you're talking about. Let me into your world a little bit so I can develop some empathy for your space and want to maybe lean in and help take care of you or care about you rather than see whatever it is that you're saying as a blatant attack on me and my ideals. And then we just don't fucking get anywhere.
Yeah.
Like that's the goal within couples therapy. Can I create a space where I hear what you're saying and I have empathy and I see you as hurting rather than trying to hurt? And on a global, bigger level, can we get to a place where we go, I see these other people as hurting and not trying to hurt, and maybe even going even beyond to go, some of this, I said this to somebody the other day, I posted this a while ago, in a developmental trauma book I was reading, there was a quote, and I wrote it down like 4 years ago and I found it in my phone, but it said something like, anger is a life supportive response intended to impact an unsupportive environment. And so even if you just go as a little kid in the home that never feels heard and that little kid starts breaking shit, right? I'm getting my parents' attention. They may be yelling at me, but they're looking at me, right? Like sometimes the anger becomes like the last place when nobody's ever felt heard or validated. And this isn't just to say on one side. Both sides are feeling this way right now. And both sides I have friends that are fucking crazy conspiracy theorists and like going down these rabbit holes of things right now. And we're like trying to listen, but never before was our group text a bunch of people like getting into it and being like, fuck you, bro. Like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking. Like, I don't care if you believe Bill Gates is trying to euthanize the fucking world or whatever, but like, also, can we just have a discussion about it instead of like getting pissed at each other? Because really what's happening is you want it, we get ego involved in these things too, I think. I believe what I believe and I believe it's right. And if you tell me it's wrong, that affects my ego because you're saying something about my intelligence or whatever. So I want to double down and continue to say, let me show you more evidence. Let me push this. Let me push that. Instead of saying, let's combine in the middle and just hear all the sides. Well, I'm going to just keep throwing shit at you that's going to defend my side. And then you're going to get more pissed. And eventually, like I see in my group text with my friends, eventually it turns into low blow shit that doesn't even have to do with anything. It's like, oh yeah, well you're fucking, I know your relationship's falling apart. Like, you know, I mean, that's not a real example, but like that's the type of shit that it goes to, right? Well, you're a loser. Right. So, and that's where we go. Cause
and then it just ends. That just ends.
Right.
Ends any progress that may have been on the table.
Yep.
Just takes it off.
I think like this is a big thing. This whole, I just got off the phone with somebody who was talking about how the pandemic has been like, it's like a sick thing for like therapists to be like, I don't like when people are in discomfort. Let me preface with that. At the core of my being, I don't like seeing people hurting or uncomfortable or whatever. But as a therapist, I also know that that's the place where change comes from. And that's the place that forces people out of their comfort zones to do something different. So there's a place for me that thinks like all of this stuff that's going on is like bringing about a lot of needed change, and it's coming in the form of a bunch of fucking discomfort. But we're just ultimately like, everybody's seeing where the threshold of their window of tolerance for things is right now. And people aren't reacting in healthy adult ways. And it's pointing to like, yo, maybe we needed to do some things earlier in life to figure out how to teach people coping skills and how to regulate their emotions. Because when you got somebody going in Target and tearing down a fucking display because like, I've seen ones where it's like people didn't even ask to wear a mask or something. They're just like, fuck this. And I see that person, I was like, that person's at the end of their rope, and it's coming out in a childlike temper tantrum now because they don't have the skills to actually regulate their emotions. And now we go to Thanksgiving, get a couple of drinks involved, and people don't have the skills to regulate and talk cordially, especially with our family members. We think our loved ones and our family members are the ones we fucking lay into the most.
For sure.
Well, like you feel more comfortable.
Yeah. I just realized as you're speaking that I did a horrible job introducing you at the beginning. So I'm going to do a halfway introduction here. You've been on my podcast before. You're a licensed marriage and family therapist. You have your own history of addiction. And you were one of the first ones to come on my podcast. So I really appreciate you coming back on, man.
Yeah, man. I feel like I've been like having like a meta, like watching myself talk, and I'm like, bro, you're rambling. You're talking so much.
It's great. It's great.
We sort of just dove right in, so you didn't need to. You didn't have time for an introduction.
Well, now that I've plugged your credentials, back to what we were talking about, do you think it's necessary that all people, like, say there's a discussion between me and my aunt, just for example. I don't have any problems with an aunt, but say I did. Is it important that we come to the discussion table like on the same basis? Like, do we both need to have this groundwork of, okay, I'm going to listen, or is it possible for one party to kind of crack that open in the other without them knowing it? You know, does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think probably the way to changing someone's mind, if that's the goal, or that, like, say I want you to validate my belief or my space or hear what I'm saying, is just to go into it without the intention of trying to do that right, and just trying to have a conversation and keep it cordial, and then maybe both sides actually get a chance to calmly deliver some information that maybe the other side hasn't heard before, right? But when somebody gets triggered or upset or somebody feels defensive, then you're not going to really get anywhere, right?
Yeah.
I also think about, so with a lot of like social justice movement stuff right now too, there's been a big push on like call people out, right? So don't, if somebody makes a joke, a racist joke, or somebody says something that's like a microaggression or something like that, right? Don't just, where maybe you would have turned a blind eye to it, now people are like, don't turn a blind eye to it. You're allowing the problem to continue. So call somebody out and make a stand. And while I see value in that in a place, right, I also see, like, when you're in your family systems and you're just like calling out all your family members who may or may not ever change, there's better ways to do it than to be in their face and shaming them for what they think, right? Like, I think that's what you're talking about earlier too, is there's a lot of shaming going on now, and there's a lot of, and I think that that's a product of this too, kind of like you're talking about Sean King, and that we're seeing one side of one thing, but like, I'd be willing to bet that there's a whole huge group of people in the middle that are willing to have conversations, that are having conversations, but we're only getting access to the really like chaotic, conflictual shit that people are having, exactly. Right? And so we see that and we get more angry, rather than like, there's people that are actually willing to just like have a conversation with you, and you maybe address that. Like, I did a podcast with this dude, William. He's a therapist. I went to school, African-American male. I said, like, I was thinking in the shower right before, I know for sure I have racial biases in me. Like, they're in there. Mm-hmm. I don't want them there, but they're there. And so I was asking him, bro, how do you feel if I were to say to you, like, I know I have racist attitudes in me. Like, I don't outwardly go out, but like, I might look at somebody sideways or think something, and then I catch myself going like, whoa, bro, where did that thought come from? Right. And like, and he was like, it almost makes me more comfortable knowing that you're willing to like think about these things and have a conversation, rather than just like hold it in and then not do anything about it, you know?
Dude, yeah, 100%. And I think you did a really good thing there, and just like recognizing it and being vocal about it. And I think it should be up to the individual to step into that space. And just to like double back to what you were saying about calling people out, I have a huge problem with that. And just what that means for society, and just, you know, how much friction that is encouraging in, you know, day-to-day interactions, where we're constantly being asked to police the actions and the words of other people. It doesn't seem like we're going to get to a better place that way. You know, it seems like you're, by doing that, by encouraging people to look for racism in every move, or to take every opportunity to explain why an action is racist, you're just putting people down, really. You're making people, you know, I don't know. There just seems like there should be a better way to go about educating people than to call people out for their actions.
Yeah. I think it's like,
unless they're egregious, you know, unless it's like something.
Yo,
really
I can't stand seeing you doing this right now blatantly in front of me, but you made a mistake with your verbiage or your words or something. Like, let's have a conversation about that. But it takes two people to be mature enough to also to have somebody go, hey, just to let you know, there might be a different way you could say that. And I'm not trying to shame you or anything, but like, and then that person could go, thanks for letting me know. Or that person could go, don't fucking tell me what to do, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it reminds me of, I was in basketball camp whenever I was probably like 14 or maybe 13 or 14. And I said something like, "Oh, nice shot, homie." I said the word homie.
Yeah.
And like one of the black kids on my team slapped me in the back of the head super hard for saying that. And he was like, "Never say that word." And I was like, I had no idea that that was a bad thing to say. I don't even, is that a, like, should I take this out of the conversation? I mean,
only if you feel you're going to go back later and feel vulnerable. I mean, this is part of something, right? Like, I'm not an expert in this, so I can't speak to like whether that's bad or good, but like we're trying to have a conversation about something without shame or insecurity or embarrassment, you know, like, hey, why am I, I know that that's like a space of, like that's, I don't know, that's adopted. That verbiage is adopted from different culture than maybe ours, but now it's sort of become part of, like, if everybody's listening to hip hop and whatever, and these things start to merge, but then people can get in a space of like cultural appropriation or, you know, I mean, though all you can do is go, I'm willing to hear that maybe it offended you and might not offend other people, you know, but it's interesting to go back to like that space of like, when you're saying, you know, I don't see how the way these conversations are happening, I don't see how any of this could get better or improve anything or whatever. There's also kind of a part of me that wonders like how much of our own control we exert into these things, right? And so the nature of some of this stuff makes me feel comfortable, and I don't like the way or where it's going, that my anxiety makes me feel like it's going, or I don't like it only seems like it could create bad change, right? Like it seems like more conflict, more fighting, but I'm not opening up space to go, I don't know what the other outcome is, but it could create something better, or all this strife and all these conversations could lead to harmony on the other side of it, but we have to go through the crazy bullshit in the beginning. I see everything like going in like pendulum, like, because like it goes way far one way, and then now like you can't even go to a college and do a stand-up comedy routine without like getting censored beforehand and running through an interview because somebody's going to get offended. And while there's a part of me that understands, well, I guess we need to include, we can't like, but you can't not offend everybody. You know?
I mean, one of my favorite quotes is from Sam Harris. He says something like, it is nobody's responsibility to make sure you're not offended. Something like that. Like it's up to the individual person to deal with that. It shouldn't be my concern to have to be worried about how I'm offending everyone around me, you know, unless I'm like doing something that is clear, unless I'm like dropping the N-bomb all the time, or like, you know, acting in a really ridiculous way. I shouldn't have to worry about the nuance of my conversation or actions constantly and consider how it's offending other people, you know? And I think that's like one of the things that kind of trips me out about this moment we're in, is that people are becoming hypersensitive to everything, where, you know, we're constantly looking for that thing to deplatform a person, or to like say that this person is holding on to racism or something. And it's like, well, maybe that person just had a slip of words. You know, we live in a society where people are just spitting their thoughts out as they come on Twitter. People are getting into podcast conversations and, you know, talking themselves into a corner or whatever. It doesn't mean that that person is racist. You know, maybe they have some biases that they're holding on to, but it doesn't mean that they're out in the world acting in racist ways, promoting their race and disparaging others. You know, it's a difficult space. One
thing for sure is if somebody makes a mistake with their words or says something that they were unaware of potentially, the way to get them to hear you or change is not to shame the shit out of them or cancel them or say, protest this person until their livelihood is completely destroyed and now they're getting death threats because of one thing that they said, right? Like, can we have a conversation? Am I willing to hear? That's the biggest thing that I'm trying to pay attention to with a lot of this stuff is I don't understand your point of view. I've never lived it. I don't have to experience it. Whatever the media is constructing to, but I still, at the end of the day, I haven't lived or walked in your shoes. And so can I be willing to allow a space where I let you educate me or inform me on what it's like for you? Right. And do you have the ability to say it in a way that's allowing me to empathize and hear it rather than feel attacked. And I mean, that's where we need to continue working on some of this stuff. Like what you're saying about it's nobody. What was the Sam Harris? Was it Sam Harris?
About it's not anybody's responsibility to make sure you're not offended.
Right. So like, again, me bringing it back to therapy, this was like a big thing that I remember learning this in my sex therapy class, and then I've kind of carried it with me. And I'm paraphrasing and probably not capturing the whole thing, but there's this guy, David Snarch. He's a couples therapist, sex therapist, does a lot of stuff. And so where my emotionally focused therapy is all about like building bonds and connection and attachment and safe space. His thing is like relationships in general are not safe. There's anxiety in them all the time. Not physically unsafe, right? Like emotionally unsafe, because I'm going to have needs that might differ from yours, and you're going to have needs and wants or opinions that differ from mine. So either like how he describes it is basically like I either hold the anxiety, right? Because I don't get to say what I want to say or what I need to say or express my opinion. So I'm holding on to that anxiety, or I'm willing to put it on you by saying what I need to say. And I trust that you're a differentiated enough person, that you've done your work, that you can handle hearing something and not get completely fucking dysregulated and go, I understand. Like the example that was given was just like in the context of sex, but it's like, so if I want to get into some like bondage or something, right? Like I want to do something that's a little out there but I like it. It makes me feel good. I get pleasure out of it. It's sexual, whatever. There's nothing wrong with it, right? But I feel like it's a fetish or it's in an extreme end of something, a perversion. So I don't want to tell my partner about this. So I go my whole days without ever telling my partner, because I'm projecting into her and I'm going, she's going to think I'm a pervert and then she's going to leave me. She's never going to want to do this. But then what's the alternative? I never get hurt. I never get my needs met. Can I now trust that she's an adult? She's she's done her work to be a healthy human being. And she can either say to me, no, doesn't sound like something I want to do. And now I don't unravel and go, oh, that's it. She thinks I'm a pervert. I just hear no. And I respect her right to say no. Or she says, I'm not comfortable really with it, but I'll do it once with you. Right. But like that analogy or metaphor is kind of this space of, we're walking around in relationship all day, every day. And then we're like, you offended me. And it's like, yo, I said something. If it's egregious, like you said, if it's like blatantly malicious, then people have a social responsibility. We live in a society. You can't walk around. I mean, to me, there's a space that like realistically, I'm like, if you were at your most enlightened space, somebody walked up to you, you fucking cocksucker, motherfucker, whatever, you're a loser, piece of shit, hit you with all the lowest blows, and you went, what you say doesn't offend me. Like, right? Like, but that requires...
we should be striving for that, not for policing those people who are not capable of that, right?
But that's hard work to get there, right? Because we all get offended and get insecure about things, but there's at least a space to be able to go, my words theoretically shouldn't have enough power to unravel your whole existence, but they also do. Like, I mean, if somebody's always felt not seen, heard, appreciated, understood, I mean, even just this is like a weird side example, but like as a person who's in recovery, was like, I don't really call myself an alcoholic anymore, but like I certainly was an alcoholic at a period of time, or I certainly had a severe problem. I'm in class in grad school and we're talking about all this inclusion and all this other stuff, right? And like, well, when you say that, that's offending so-and-so and whatever. And then at the same time, everyone's like, let's go out for drinks later. Hey, let's all go party and
Cinco
shit.
de Mayo.
Right. And so there's a part of me that's like, even all of you that are trying to be so inclusive are still excluding me. But then there's other part of me that goes, well, it's my job to realize that I'm dealing with something that a lot of other people don't deal with. And so I have to shore up my confidence and my resources and my insecurities and all that so that I can walk about in this world. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
for sure.
I wish that wasn't the case. I wish there was a space where everybody felt just like warm and fuzzy and included, but we don't live in that world. And now we live in a world where you're not getting bullied at school by the kid. You're getting bullied online by thousands of people if they so choose to. And it's pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah. So whenever you look at this movement and some of the extreme actors in it, do you ever put your therapist hat on and are just like, man, these people are acting out in based on something that's happened to them before? So just to kind of double back here, one of the things that I found really valuable from you was your white privilege episode that you did, because it got me to relook at some things in my life through the lens of what would have happened if I was black and this same situation occurred. Would it have ended the same? And, the answer is probably not for many of them. And I think that having that self-awareness is super important in like navigating this moment and being a productive player in this game that's going on right now.
Yeah.
How much of what is going on right now do you think is just lack of people's self-awareness?
Well, I mean, I think lack of self-awareness is at the core of like a lot of problems in general, right? Relationship problems, whatever. So now there's this like lack of how I might be impacting somebody else, how my actions are. Can I say this in a different way? That's being amplified like crazy, but there's just not a lot of us trying to reflect on our own stuff, reflect on our own traumas, reflect on our own, and also to be willing to take a space to go, that person might have a bunch of traumas I don't know anything about, right? Like, I don't know. I've never experienced that type of stuff. I don't know what the cultural impact of having, my ancestors enslaved and things. I don't know what that feels like. I can imagine. I can go, man, that must be heavy. And then some people be like, oh, that was a long time ago. But it still happened, and it happened to somebody rather than to me and my people. So I don't really know what that feels like, right? Yeah. But can I just step into it?
I think you can get close. I think you can get close, though. You can't. I mean, I don't want to take someone else's experience away from them, but if you put a little time aside and, use your brain to kind of insert yourself into their shoes and really absorb the situation, you can kind of approximate what it must feel like, right? You can kind of begin to understand in a way, maybe not fully, but I mean, there's some awareness you're capable of getting to.
And there's a start, right? At least just trying to be willing to, because you're asking me about this, but then also at the same time, I asked you, like, don't you think, or do you think, I don't want to say don't you think, because then that implies like you better think like I think, that all of this stuff is just sort of like on a bigger social level of like disconnection just in general, that we're not willing to, like, I don't think we're as engaged anymore, and like we're a community and we're a people and we all work together, right? Yeah. We're like, it's me and my people, and I'm gonna protect myself and my own, and I'm gonna rise to the top however I can and whatever. And then some of the stuff, I'm setting myself up to be criticized probably here too, but like if you just looked at some different countries where there was a little bit more of like a social agenda, and I'm not even talking about like socialism or something, right? But maybe it just seemed like
cohesion, like a group, like a team.
New Zealand's like locking shit down, right? And it seemed like people were just like, all right, let's do it for the greater good of the country. And I have no basis for knowing if that's how people felt or whatever, but they seem to have like relatively low cases and things. And granted, we're a lot bigger population, all that. But like the point is, we're getting further and further away from connection, belonging, socializing in healthy ways with each other, and accepting your differences and accepting my differences, and we can still be friends, to just like everything is a conflict. And oh God. And then like I'm even thinking of this. I'm always going to just relate things back to like therapeutic stuff, right? But like,
yeah, of course.
If you've had poor boundaries in your family system, and your family, like when you've tried to express an idea, somebody in your family has like said, you're wrong for thinking that, or don't be that way. Or you express an emotion and they're like, oh, you want to cry? Like, I'll give you something to cry about, I'm sure we've all heard that one. But so there comes a place now from childhood that you start to internalize this space where your needs, your views, your opinions are wrong, and they're also conflict, right? Like they're saying no is starting a conflict with somebody. If like I can use this as an example, and if my mom listens, she'll get upset. But like, there's a space where before I moved into my new place, I moved back home briefly with my parents before we were like, I was out of my old place and I needed a place for a couple of weeks and come into my new place. And I was at home. I'm doing therapy 8-9 hours a day. I come back to my parents' place and I'm like doing my notes. And then my mom's like wants to talk to me and she's coming at me saying a bunch of stuff, you know? And the old me would be like, God, Mom, like, leave me alone. Why are you always in my space? And then the me that's done a lot of work is like, okay, that's how you're going to recreate that system. That's always been that. Now she's going to get mad at you if you react that way. So try to just be very peaceful and say, hey, Mom, could you give me a couple minutes? I just got to finish stuff. You know, I've been talking to people all day, right? And then my mom says, oh, why are you so nasty? Why are you like that? Nobody can talk to you and that, right? And then I want to get pissed again and go, oh, well, fuck that, right? But then there's a space that goes, that's going to go back into that system that's always there. Right. And she's going to point the finger at you and say, see, look how you always act, right? And so then there's a space for me just to go, Mom, there's nothing wrong with me asking for a couple minutes. I've had a long day, right? And trying to be really regulated and calm about it. But this is a thing. So me using that as an example is I've had that a lot in my life. And then I grow up as an adult and somebody pushes a boundary of my own or crosses a line or says an opinion, or what I want to say an opinion that's different from theirs, but I feel like it's going to be such conflict and such a problem. And so I don't say it. Or when I do finally say it, I've escalated internally so much that it comes out as yelling instead of just a calm. Like I want to go tell my neighbor right now to turn down his TV. He listens to it like on like fucking 100 decibels like all day.
Right now?
Yes. Like I was worried that it was going to get on the microphone, right? And like, but there's a part of me that's like, he'll get mad at me. Like if I go ask him politely, it'll cause conflict and then he'll get mad at me. Sure. And where I should be able to feel confident just going, hey man, do you mind turning down your TV a little bit? Thanks, dude. Appreciate it. And he can go, and he has a right to say, no. It's my house. I'd rather not. Yeah. But like if he goes, well, fuck you for telling me what to do in my house, like then we're back where this just amplifies out into a bigger societal. So long story short, like I think we're all dealing with that shit to an extent too. And we're all dealing with traumas and insecurities and experiences that impacted us. And then it's coming out in these like uber accentuated ways now.
It's like coming out in a way that people who are involved in these like really extreme acts, it seems to me, and I'm no therapist, I just am a guy who was depressed once. It seems to me as though these people who have probably their traumas and their situations, things they're holding on to, have now found a thing to release it on, something that they believe deserves anger or attention. And so they're taking everything that they've been holding on to for, 20 years, whatever. And now it's coming out in this like waterfall type of moment where it's, it's almost as though the reasons that people are upset right now are being lost in just the anger that everyone is experiencing. Like this should be a moment where we're seriously looking at things that could change to improve the lives of citizens in this country. But instead we're like burning cities. We're like, just demonizing police officers and like going through all these things that seem to be just extreme manifestations of, or like extreme actions that are coming from a place of just inner pain,
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's where it starts always for everybody is some sort of inner pain and wanting that pain to be recognized and validated. And when you try multiple ways to get that pain recognized and validated with little to no resolution, then it's going to keep spiking up, right? Like I have couples that are in relationships for 10 years and they started out with just one little thing that hurt somebody's feelings and it never got resolved. And 10 years later, they're at the verge of divorce. And then we like dig into some of it and it's like, oh, it was just this thing got said wrong a while ago. And we just never had the ability to be like, hey, yo, let's take a step back and I can admit where I went wrong back there. But it's double down, dig your heels in and go further and more extreme. And it's how I will say it's happening you're seeing the extremism on both sides, right?
Oh, for sure. I'm not trying to condemn, right now, I personally do have a problem with the extreme left. I've had a problem with the extreme right for a long time. But to me, what is going on is a pendulum swing that doesn't need to happen. And it scares me. So, yeah, sorry to cut you off.
But so that's a good thing to just acknowledge, too, right? It scares me, right? You just tipped on when you asked, like, it's Thanksgiving's coming up and we're going to have conversations with our family members and whatever else. And how do you have those conversations, or can you like have those conversations, right? Without that's the place to go to the vulnerability and to talk about what they would call like the primary emotion is like fear. I'm scared. And some of this stuff scares me, and it scares me because I don't have control, or I predict where it might go, and it's worrisome to me. I can have a conversation about that more than I can have a conversation about you're wrong for thinking what you think. Because essentially me saying you're wrong for thinking what you think is me trying to convince you to think the way that doesn't scare me and grapple with some control, right? Because ultimately I'm fearful of the unknown future and what that looks like. And both sides are. The right is fearful of what's going to happen if like the world changes and we take all the statues down and whatever. Oh God, that scares me. I don't like to think about a world that I don't know like that. And then the left is like, what happens if the right takes all the, like there's just this divide. And then on a political nature, like our political officials don't really fucking help the problem.
Dude,
because
they do not care.
Yeah.
They don't care. They just only care about power
and money,
about their own power.
Right.
Yep.
How can I stay in this cushy fucking position that goes on break for a month and still gets paid $5,000 a day or whatever when the rest of the country shut down and we don't know what we're going to, but like, but I'm making, between $175,000 and $400,000 a year. I'm going to do what I need to do to keep this job. And that looks like making it look like I'm solving problems when I'm not fucking solving any problems.
For sure. No, I feel like the question, 100%. And I feel like the question, like politicians, and I'm picking on the left, but I just wanted to be clear that I am not Republican. I don't identify with the right either. Like you, I'm somewhere in the middle, and neither party really speaks to me right now at the moment. But I feel like one of the things the left has been doing is just kind of hijacking the emotion that's going on in this country, where people feel as though they have been taken advantage of, where people feel as though they have been treated less than human. And that's a real feeling that needs to be addressed, but they don't actually care about fixing it. It doesn't seem like they just want to they want to get their power back and hold on to that power and just, say what they need to say to make people happy without actually doing anything. And I mean, you can just look at the fact that we've gone, 6 months since a relief check has gone out, and people are losing their jobs by the thousands, by the millions, and nothing is getting done. Like it's just a hard thing whenever there's real issues, real hurt in this country that needs to be addressed, and no one in charge seems to care.
And they don't have to face any consequences.
Yeah.
There's no, like, if you can get subpoenaed and not go, or if you can make a mistake and there's nobody coming down and saying, hey, you should lose your job for that, right? Like, then what's the incentive to actually dig in and fight for it? Like, it's just like a show. They just sit there and they fight about bullshit, but like behind closed doors, there's part of me that's just like, they're all in on it together and they don't give a fuck. And they go, hey, the more that we debate about this thing, the longer we can drag it out, and we won't have to, and we can give bailouts to the fucking corporations. And like, it's just crazy. I mean, I think like on a political level, I lost my train of thought. I don't even know what I was going to say. I've never been this much into politics in my life before all of this.
Same here. Yeah, same here. But I mean, now is the time to get involved, right? And I think now is this is the call has been put out for people to care about this, because we've gone too far into this just alternate reality where people are not truly represented. And it's really frustrating because it feels as though we're pawns in some sort of game where it's just, setting people up against each other to push your own, to get more power for yourself is just like, it's so exhausting, man. Yeah. It's exhausting.
And I mean, that's to bring it back to the documentary. Like
let's bring it back.
We are pawns.
Yeah.
Like that's what it is. We are the commodity or whatever it is now, and the lower half of us that aren't making millions of dollars, and we're consumers and we're pawns, and then everything else just goes back into figuring out, like, even all these fucking bills that they pass. I realize I'm cussing a lot on this, but like, it always ends up coming back around that it's like somebody's got a vested interest in some money in this pipeline or this thing or whatever, you know, and it just comes back to making a bottom line and a profit and money.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm curious to also bring it back to the social media thing. With while talking about the political divide, the extreme divide, all that, right? You said something about, like, you're upset, and this is not me again trying to, like, argue one side either. It's a question. You're upset, or you have strong views against the extreme left right now, right? Because of this and that.
Yeah.
Given what we know after watching the documentary, do you feel like some of that space has been ramped up by the way that these algorithms and things are feeding you the information, right? Like, because that's what they say that it's doing to all of us. Like, it's giving us the information that's going to get us more riled up so that we get more upset, so that we make more of a stand and we cause more of a conflict, right? Like,
right. And I maybe to a degree, and I don't want to act like I'm holier than thou or something, but, you know, I feel as though I haven't picked a team. Like, I'm not part of this, like, team tribalism mentality that seems to be just ripping us apart. To me, I mean, and there's a lot of people like this. Like, there was a report that came out recently called the Hidden Tribes Report, and they found that, like, the vast majority of Americans are, you know, very firmly in this moderate space that's not really represented in the media at all. Like, you know, you have Fox News and the far right kind of always pitching their narrative, and then you have MSNBC and them and that side always doing their thing. But really, the most Americans are in the middle, and they just are tired of this game. And I think, I don't know, I would admit that, yes, I probably have been manipulated by my streams in certain ways, but I also think that I am part of a certain amount of people that just see the whole thing as bullshit, that just see what's going on as, you know, for what it is in a way. It's just people being incentivized by money, not by actually making things better. And that's like the core of the problem. And I don't hate capitalism. I think capitalism is a good thing if it's done properly. You know, it's obviously better than communist countries that have existed in the past, but yeah, it's out of hand. Like, the fact that that our news outlets are incentivized to get clicks. So their incentive is to have the most inflammatory headline that they can to get eyes on their website, to potentially
boost
click
their
ads
SEO
and make them
and shit.
Yeah. And it's like they aren't actually incentivized with the truth or with making lives better. And that's like the whole game right now.
Yeah.
And it's just gotten out of hand, and we are experiencing real world consequences because of it.
It's scary. I mean, I'm scared too. It's really like, there's a part of me that goes, okay, can't predict the future, don't know, look at the silver lining, look at optimism, think everything has, I work with a lot of people who go through real dark shit, and I see them come out of it, right? And then they learned, and they look back and they go, in hindsight, I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't gone through all that stuff. But at the same time,
does that hold true for a societal level?
Right. I mean,
though?
I don't,
like,
you're putting a lot of, like, on one person to, like, you know, elevate
330 million,
right?
You know, from 1 to 330.
Yep, and that's putting a lot of optimism, I guess, in a space that people are willing to try to, like, level up or change their views, or, like, and it's not to change their views to the right view, it's to change their, like, or maybe change their approach to things or something, right? Like, it's fucking crazy.
I don't even think there's not necessarily, I mean, this is my perspective. I don't believe that there is a right view on anything. Like, everything is so nuanced and requires so much discussion, honest discussion, and, like, research and understanding roots of causes. And, like, to have just a blanket view about any topic right now seems to me to be kind of naive, to think that one side has it right completely. Like, it's just not true.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that, you know, one thing that might be good about this time that we're going through is just people kind of shaking off the hold that, you know, left and right politics has had. And that's one thing that I have experienced since the killing of George Floyd, was just this kind of realization of like, oh, I've been playing the team game this whole time.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that, and I hope that's what's going on.
Hopefully there will be a place where we get back to that. It seems like it's going to get worse before it gets better. Unfortunately, it's kind of scary way, because things keep, like, I'm scared of the election.
Oh, I'm frightened
on
man.
both
Terrified.
sides. Like, I will say right now, I don't like Trump. I don't want Trump to win. I have no problem admitting that. I don't like the man as a person, just his character. And I don't like Biden either. But I don't want to know what will happen if I'm fearful of what could happen if Trump stays in power longer. And I'm also fearful of what happens if he loses the election, because yeah. I'm afraid that all of this discord and all of this stuff, that there won't be there's not a space anymore to go, all right, you won fair and square and I'll transition out of power. There's a place to go. It was rigged. It was bullshit. It was lied. It was, you were manipulated by the media. You were this. And then now what? I don't know. Maybe we were manipulated by the media. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah. I actually saw on, I think it was The Hill today, they were talking about a report that just came out that said something like, if Trump wins, 60% of Democrats will believe that it was a rigged election. And if Biden wins, 60% of Republicans will believe it's rigged. Yeah. So that's just a whole block of Americans who are going into this election believing that if their guy doesn't win, then the game was rigged.
Right.
And that just goes to a weird space. How do we get through that?
Yeah. And I think that there's some intentionality behind creating a space where the sides can point to and go, it was rigged, it was fake, it was false, and let's lock this thing up in lawsuits and bullshit and whatever for an extended period of time. Because at the end of the day, Trump's not a politician, but he's like all the politicians in that he knows this is a big ad campaign for him, and it serves to put more money in his pocket. Trump doesn't give a fuck about some dude in Alabama. And I'm not trying to couch Alabama as a bad, but I think Howard Stern said something too. I know him. His base, a lot of his base, he wouldn't be caught dead hanging out with any of his fucking base. He wouldn't let him into his country club. he doesn't give a fuck but making more money. That's what he does. And you can't knock him for being a businessman, but it's, anyway, I didn't want to go down that space, but yeah, it's a scary, weird, time we're in.
Have you heard of Articles of Unity?
I've seen you posting some stuff, and then I've seen a few other people. Is that the mid range? What's his name? Maybe it's not the thing I'm thinking. What was the dude that was running for president? Tech guy, had a bunch of money.
Andrew Yang.
Yeah. Isn't he involved in some of that too? Maybe
he was. So I've been pretty involved in this. I've been working on the podcast recently for them. Not the official Brett Weinstein podcast.
You've been working on their podcast?
On this UnityNow podcast. Yeah, so it's a volunteer run organization, but the push is to have a center left and a center right person on the ticket running together. That's not beholden to special interests, that will actually govern for the American people. Right. And
that it seems like such a no-brainer. That's
I know.
Hey, how can we get a couple people in here that would compromise and agree on things, but we're just getting further and further and nothing's ever getting accomplished. It's just, and then if one side raises something, then the other side's you're only trying to meet your agenda, what about, is it good for society as a whole?
It must be maddening, man, as a therapist to watch all this stuff.
It's coming up in a lot of people's lives now. It's at the forefront of a lot of conversations I have with people, and I have conversations on both sides with people, and I try to stay impartial, and I don't.
How do you navigate that whenever someone is, I'm sure you've had clients who are in relationships where the political viewpoints differ, right? Is that a common thing? Or is it more so just dealing with what's going on in society?
There's a lot of people have a lot of anxiety about what's going on in society, about that unknown, that lack of control, and the fear of what it's going to be. A lot of kids I have are really worried about what's going on. Yeah. Young adults, 20 to 16 type thing, right? And then I have families. So I just got a call the other day about a family that like wants to have therapy because they all are like on divided sides, and the lady explicitly said like, you know, this type of conversation's causing a lot of problems for our family right now. So
how do you navigate that, man? Because you don't want to make it more political space and input your own views into it, but you need to give them, I mean, there has to be space for people to have those discussions. Like not having the discussion is not an option, right?
I mean, and people can not have the discussions if they want. Like you got to pick and choose. Like we were at a 5-year-old's birthday the other day, and my fiance's 88-year-old grandfather said something about like this kid's plate that had some representation of all different races, and he said something like aggressively racist about it. And then my fiance said like, Grandpa, like what, you know, like, whoa, that is not, and there's little girls that look like this and they want to, you know, and they like this and stuff, you know. And then he kind of doubled down. And then it was kind of this space of like, are we going to argue with an 88-year-old man at his own home right now who, I mean, I'm sure there's some people that would say that. And then there's some people that they're going to tiptoe lightly to keep the unity in their family and maybe address these things on bigger. But at the end of the day, it's causing problems in families. How I address it as a therapist, like I've done a lot of work learning how to remain as unbiased as I can. And that involves checking my own attitudes and things I can have my own opinions on things. But like, for example, if I'm doing couples therapy and one member has had an affair, like, that's a good example because it's easy to look at the partner that had the affair and go, that's the bad person.
Right.
But the framework and the science and the roadmap that I have in my theory that I use to teach me how to move through these things with people also shows that a lot of affairs come from a lack of connection and they build over time. And so there's been something happening in the relationship prior to the bad thing happening. And I can look at both sides and go, as hard as it is to see, you both are creating the dynamic that you're stuck in right now. And the same thing with families. Like I can come back to boundaries and to like, I strip the content away. People get focused on the content, which is like all the words and shit, right?
Right. Like, oh, I support Black Lives Matter and I don't. And they get stuck up on that. And
the process is more of like, you know, how is it making me feel? How is it happening? How are we moving through it? Like that, I think of it as like, and this might be an analogy that a lot of people don't connect with, but like you have like, you know, Windows for your computer, right? And it's like the interface that you see. That's the content because it's easy to see. It's easy to grab onto. It's easy to work with. And the process is like all the code underneath that's like really making it tick, you know? And like we operate that way because there's a lot of other stuff going on, but we get caught up on semantics and words and, well, no, that's not what you said. You said, instead of, it hurt my feelings. Like, can we just stop and just think for a minute, like what you said hurt my feelings? Oh yeah, I guess I can see that. That would hurt my feelings too. Okay, let's, but we don't, it's hard. We don't operate in those ways. So,
yeah.
But like that, there is a technique for me at least, because this is a soft science, but it's based in science and research and things. And there's roadmaps and treatment plans and things that I can use to move people through things. And even when I help a family member learn how to set boundaries or respect boundaries, that's not me ever even taking a side on anything. That's me just saying, you have a right to have your needs met and respect your boundary. And you need to also understand that you have that right too. And you need to respect boundaries, right? Like those are different conversations than, well, let's talk about why your point of view is wrong. Like, can you accept that your words,
debate.
Yeah, like your words are hurting that person. And can you accept that they're trying to tell you that it's hurtful and you keep plowing through that and not listening to them because you just want to drive your point home? Why not take a step back and hear that they're trying to set a boundary and be respectful of that, you know?
Right.
It's hard, man. Just being a human is hard.